courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 433. I am Andrew NLSC on Twitter. I'm a 10 who likes single-player games. My co-host is Derek. He is Deeper384 on Twitter. He is a 10 who enjoys offline multiplayer. Derek, good to talk to you again, and I hope you don't have any horrible tweets that went viral.
No, happy to be here. The truth is, ladies, Andrew is a 10, but he likes Bart versus the Space Mutants. So I don't know if that makes you want to swipe left or not, but you might want to take that under consideration.
I think I know where I'm going wrong on those apps now. That's clearly where I'm going wrong. Why I'm single. But yes, interesting tweets from EA and 2K. Originally 2K, and then EA jumped on the bandwagon. And what a PR blunder.
It didn't go well for either of them, really. Actually, EA, it's the Electronic Arts account on Twitter, got roasted big time for their attempt at being funny. And in a way, the way that they worded it, they kind of crapped on people who love single player games. Because if you know the origin of the he's a 10, she's a 10 thing, which actually started on TikTok, it's a rating game. Actually, if you know the origin, the but he's portion or but she's portion is a negative. So I know you have the tweet in front of you to read it, but they got heavily roasted for that tweet, and then they ended up trying to backtrack and send out some sort of we deserved it tweet after, and that didn't go well either.
No, not at all. And it did begin with 2K, the WWE games Twitter handle. He's a 10 but only plays WWE 2K22 offline. And then, as you said, the official EA account chimed in with they're a 10 but they only like playing single-player games. And yeah, people who still like playing single-player games, which is a lot of people, jumped in to say, not cool, and this is a ridiculous, these are ridiculous tweets. The WWE 2K account really got dunked on, body slammed, if you will. Some people were talking about disconnections, a lot of screenshots of people getting disconnections and server errors and whatnot, and people saying that the online scene is garbage and toxic, much as it is in 2K. And considering how much toxicity there is in online communities these days, yes, such bad tweets, and for EA to be dumping on single-player games like that as well, jumping on the bandwagon, that was... I'm not a fan of the whole ratio thing, Derek, but at the same time, that was a good ratio on both of those accounts. I was glad to see them both get ratioed.
Yeah, I mean, the WWE 2K thing it's tone deaf, right? Like, the server issues with 2K is a known problem, and it's been a problem for how long? Years. So what ends up happening is a tweet like that, it doesn't just reach like a certain part of the population where the servers are working correctly, right? Where they're better. The tweet is viewed by people all around the world. So all of these areas where the 2K servers aren't strong, where people have connection issues, where it's toxic for them maybe to even be online on that game, everybody is seeing that tweet. So incredibly tone deaf tweet. Again, it's also alienating all of the people who like to play games offline, who don't want to deal with that online toxicity, who don't want to deal with server issues, who enjoy maybe that single player experience or the local multiplayer experience. It's like alienating them and almost like insulting them. And so yeah, I think that they screwed up, and then EA, from what I'm gathering, from seeing the responses to the tweets, people in the know said that it wasn't an intern that tweeted that for Electronic Arts. It wasn't somebody new. It was the people that had the idea to tweet that were two experienced people at Electronic Arts. I believe experienced social media managers. So you can't blame it on an intern or somebody new. They tweeted that with experience, and that's a red flag. That's not a good look for them.
No, not at all. And every time there's a bad tweet by a brand, by a company like this, everybody says, "Oh, the intern got the account again," and that's kind of the running gag. But the I've seen other people who work for these companies say, the interns, they usually don't get access to these accounts. It's always somebody higher up, somebody who is trusted to make these tweets. I mean, look at Ronnie 2K, some of the things that he said over the years, and he remains employed and the face of the digital marketing face of 2K. So this is something that brands do try and sometimes succeed with. I mean, it certainly hasn't hurt 2K's bottom line or Ronnie's situation, Ronnie's job. But yeah, it's so tone deaf, as you said. And look, some people say it's a joke, to which I say jokes are meant to be funny. And this isn't particularly funny. It's just fanning the flames of an already toxic dumpster fire that is sometimes the online scene and online discourse. It's just, there's no point putting it out there. I don't think it made them, it certainly got engagement, but I don't think it got them any positive reception. It didn't stoke goodwill with either company, quite frankly. And there's been some responses from other developers who previously worked for EA, including Zach Mumbach, I believe his name is. If I pronounced that incorrectly, I apologize. Said, "This is the company that shut down my studio and laid off around about 100 great developers because we were making a single-player game." So, yeah, they're getting dunked on not just by fans, but, as you say, by people in the industry who have a bad history with those companies.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, they have some big titles that are coming up, some of their biggest sellers. And what are those? Single player games
Exactly.
Like Mass Effect, right? So like they're also alienating that player base that enjoys that single player experience and kind of, insulting them. So I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think it was Mills Gaming that also made a tweet that I thought was pretty funny, actually, and at the same time concerning, because it's true. But his tweet was along the lines of, he's a 10, but he peddles loot boxes and gambling mechanics to minors.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, something like that. Like, that's the type of stuff that Electronic Arts does. That's the type of stuff that 2K does. So if you want to try the whole he's a 10 and she's a 10 and all of that stuff and insult part of the player base, etc., then we can throw it right back at you in a much bigger and more hurtful and big picture way. So I thought that was incredibly telling that, 2K and EA both tried to follow that trend and tried to, be edgy, etc. And they both failed miserably and they got called out on it. So I thought it was good that they got called out on it.
No, 100%. It brings to mind the sad story of Australian actor Craig McLachlan, who was on Neighbours, the long-running soap that's just been cancelled, actually, here in Australia. And he tried his hand at stand-up for a while, Derek. And he did his first big national TV gig, and he gets out there on stage and he says, "What's worse than dog poo?" And someone in the crowd yells out, "You!" And the gig just went downhill from there. Like, there's no recovery from that. And again, it's like that. EA and 2K throwing that out there opens themselves up to so many comebacks on, he's a 10, but whatever. And 2K's account was doubling down on it in the responses. And people might say it's being too sensitive. It's just a joke. Again, I say jokes are meant to be funny, and this wasn't. It didn't promote goodwill, which is what we need in online discourse, what we need in online video game discourse, certainly, and online gaming scenes. I've enjoyed online gaming in the past, but I also know how toxic that scene is, and stuff like this just doesn't help, because there is that idea of, offline play, but it's, all ways of playing games are valid. And to that point, Obsidian came out with a tweet in response to all of this. Single player is dope, multiplayer is dope, games are rad. And that got a good response.
Yeah, they did a great job. Obsidian, the creators of Outer Worlds and I believe Fallout New Vegas,
yes,
etc. They were like, you know what? We're going to capitalize on the mistake that 2K and EA made. And we are going to be like, hey, all gamers are great. There's, all gamers are loved, multiplayer, single player, etc. And that tweet was incredibly well received, right? So good job by them. That's the way you do it right there. You can capitalize on these other big companies' follies and, make yourself look better. And I think they did a pretty good job with that. I wanted to give our listeners a quick rundown of where this the structure of the he's a 10, she's a 10 thing, so you can understand why those who know how that started and what it means, why they were upset that 2K and EA did this. So here is the definition. She's a 10, but, or he's a 10, but, also known as the rating game, is a social game on TikTok where a group of people films themselves presenting scenarios to each other using variations of the phrase she's or he's a 10, but, sometimes starting with a lower number than 10, followed by a description of a negative, remember, a negative trait that the fictitious person exhibits that might lower their score. The players then give the fictional person a new score based on the trait. So basically, like I said, a negative. EA, by doing that, said that those players who are playing single player and not playing multiplayer, that's negative. That's a negative. And people picked up on that, which is why it was received so poorly. And then 2K with the WWE 2K account basically said that if you're only playing offline, that's a negative. So, like I said, the population was smart. They picked up on it, and both companies got roasted.
There's a community manager here for a different company at Harris Foster on Twitter. Says, I remember that day in community manager school when they taught us that direct antagonization / alienation of our audience is a no-no. Apparently the EA and 2K don't. And you mentioned Mills' Switch. Mills, the streamer, of course, I think summed it up quite well when he said, edgy social media, you got your clicks, hope this was worth it. It's like a social media manager, how not to tweet lesson. Disrespecting gamers isn't the way, and the fact that two quote-unquote trained social media managers did this is insanely asinine. And yeah, I think that sums it up.
Oh, no, 100%. They were trying to be edgy, and at the same time, they were trying to be edgy, but they didn't understand the origin of the game. They couldn't possibly have understood the meaning and origin of the game. They didn't do their research, right? Otherwise, I don't think they ever would have tweeted that. And it goes back to a conversation.
Possibly, but it could be, sorry to interrupt, it could be that they understand the game. They just thought, oh, this is going to be edgy, people are going to find it cute, or they're going to find it relatable, because, haha, that's the current game that's going around, the current trend, and they jumped on it, but it just, they misunderstood the impact.
Well, I talked to you about this off air, and I talked to you about it on a prior NLSC podcast that we recorded, I don't know, maybe 100 episodes ago or whatnot. I ran into somebody who's actually in the media, who has their own media company, their own, they host podcasts, all of that stuff, podcasters, excuse me. And they cover a major sports team and everything. I talked to them for quite a while at one point, and they were trying to get me involved and everything. And they made the comment that it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative interaction with content that you post, it's the fact that you got interaction. And I told you this off air as well. I was like, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that statement. If you're getting negative responses and negative interaction related to content you produce, whether it's one tweet, whether it's a game, whether it's a video you put up on YouTube, and that negative interaction is overriding the actual positive feedback, you're doing something wrong and it looks bad on your part, and you're not going to be having the audience that you want in volume or in spirit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be the audience that you want to foster, and you'll never grow that way if you're getting majority of negative responses and interaction. So I wanted to bring that up again, because if they thought that, hey, it's going to be edgy and we're going to get negative, a lot of negative feedback on this, but hey, they're going to be paying attention to our account, I think that is the wrong way to go about things, and I would never work like that content-wise.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. It's not the attention that I seek with my content and our mutual content. I know we're both not about that or the hot takes or anything else. I mean, former wrestling personality and promoter Eric Bischoff famously said controversy creates cash. And sometimes it can, but I think there's a tipping point with attention like this. Sometimes you get that, you go viral and people enjoy it for what it is, or they enjoy it in the spirit that it's intended. But there's a tipping point where it gets to the point like this, where people say, no, that's just uncool. You're not contributing to the conversation. You're just polluting the discourse with more toxicity. It's incredibly tone deaf because you're producing games that have a single player offline component, and you're making fun of your user base, that you should be embracing all of them. So again, just so tone deaf, so ridiculous.
There's a difference between causing controversy and the way that there could be a debate, or like a healthy debate based on a topic, right?
Yes.
Stuff like that. There's a difference between that and negative interaction, negative responses, negative feedback. There's a huge difference between the two. In this case, there was nothing positive that came out of either of those tweets. That's the way I look at it. If you look at all of the responses, almost every single one of them is negative. So I don't think it sparked debate. I don't think it was, healthy controversy, because there is such a thing, like I said, healthy debate, etc. I just think it was a bad move by both companies.
It didn't endear them to anyone. Maybe a small few that said, "Oh, it's a joke. Can't you take a joke?" To which, again, I'll say for the third time, jokes are funny, and that was not. So, but with that being said, what are we going to do to be controversial this week? Are we going to what kind of tweet can we throw out there?
I mean, you won't be seeing a tweet like that from me. I know that I won't be seeing a tweet like that from you, because we don't operate that way. I mean, we've done, together over like 130 episodes now of the NLSC podcast, and we've produced a ton of content. You've wrote a bunch of articles. I've made a ton of videos, etc. And we've never operated in that kind of weird, trying to be edgy way. You know what I mean? Like trying to be edgy, or, the tone deaf way that both of those companies kind of operated in. And I don't think that we have it in us. So I don't think anybody will be seeing that from us anytime soon.
There are 10, but they don't like Bart versus the Space Mutants.
Interesting. See, the thing is,
and so Andrew remains single.
Right. So how about in the case of Shams, who does all the updates for the NBA, who was traded, who was signed, all of that stuff. He's a 10, but he leaks the NBA 2K23 cover athlete early.
Yeah, 2K was surprisingly quiet about that one. Haven't acknowledged that yet. Shams was reporting on Devin Booker's finalizing a 4-year, $214 million Supermax contract extension with the Suns. No surprise there that they're retaining him. But the surprise of that tweet, and he just kind of casually threw it out there at the end, Derek, Booker will also be the cover athlete for NBA 2K23 per sources. And people were like, what? Just kind of throw that in there.
Why did he do that? It was just so weird. It was like, it was separated by like a couple spaces, and it was just like at the bottom of the tweet. Had nothing to do with, the Suns signing him or anything like that. It's like, oh, just to let you know, he'll also be the cover athlete for NBA 2K23. So since when does Shams report on that? Or Woj? Like, I don't understand that.
Shams bomb for sure. Yeah, like the Woj bomb. I mean, here's the thing. He's an NBA insider, so he's very well connected. It's probably true. I reported this. I posted a bulletin on the site, and I said it's a possible leak. It's unconfirmed. There's no official announcement at the time. But obviously, Shams is not just some random person making stuff up on Twitter. He does have his sources, so it's quite possibly true. And look, Devin Booker being a prominent player would not surprise me. People were saying, why is he the cover athlete after the playoff performance? Well, these deals go into place a long time before any of that stuff happens, before the playoffs. Basically, these deals are signed way in advance. So it's and at the end of the day, he's still a prominent player in the NBA. So yeah, that stuff doesn't really matter. He's still a recognizable name in the league. But as far as this leak goes, I mean, the name of the game in NBA coverage, that stuff, reporting on those rumors, reporting this stuff before the teams announce things, that's just the way it goes. But video game publishers are very particular about this kind of stuff leaking, and they're usually not very happy when it does. But what are they going to do? Shams is too powerful as an NBA insider to really take down or anything, which I suppose is why they haven't acknowledged it. But yeah, it's just kind of funny that so many of us are when we go to community events and whatnot, we're under NDAs. Agree we're not going to talk about this or that until until PR says, okay, you're able to talk about this stuff now, and we're going to release this information at specific times when it suits us in the schedule for the previous season. But he just comes out and says it because he doesn't care.
Well, no, I talked to you about this off air. I thought this is kind of a twist on it. How do we know that 2K didn't reach out to the NBA or to Shams or whatnot, and they were like, slip this into a tweet?
True.
Slip this into a communication, and let's see what type of response we get, right? Like, let's see if this is going to be a well-received thing, etc. I'm not saying that's what happened, but how do we know, like with 2K's connections with the NBA, with how big 2K has gotten, how do we know that that didn't happen? So I think it's interesting. I thought it was kind of a weird way for people to find out that Booker was the cover athlete. And it's interesting. Like, if I had to compare Booker being the cover athlete this year, I might compare it to Mitch Richmond being a cover athlete for like NBA Live 97. I think that would be probably a pretty good comparison. Probably as far as his standing in the league and, you know, them making the finals recently, all of that stuff, maybe a little bit better than Steve Smith being the cover on Fox Sports Basketball 2000.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, but I would say maybe Devin Booker is the equivalent of Mitch Richmond being on the cover in NBA Live 97.
Or Paul George being on the cover of 2K17. You know, things like that where it's not maybe your top tier star. But yeah, Mitch Richmond Live 97 is a great one as well. This is when we go back to the old days of when we had multiple games coming out. I mean, there were only so many stars that could go around. I mean, if NBA Live 2000 has Tim Duncan and NBA 2K has Allen Iverson, then if you're NBA Inside Drive 2000, you end up with Ray Allen, who's still a good choice. But if you're NBA In the Zone 2000, you end up with Marcus Camby. As you said, Fox Sports NBA Basketball 2000, Steve Smith on the downswing of his career. So there's only so many big names that you can get at that time, and even today. So if the ideal choice of a cover player has already been taken by another company back in the day, you took whoever you could sign who's got some kind of name recognition. And over the years, it's never been the best player in the league on the cover. Sometimes it's lined up that way, but not always. And at the end of the day, it is just the cover player. It's what's the content of the game is what matters.
Well, here's the thing, 100%, right? But as far as them not wanting to repeat a recent cover athlete, you know, Steph Curry was part of the NBA 2K16 montage of cover athletes, right? Like, it was Steph Curry, James Harden, and Anthony Davis, right? You know, Steph Curry's never been on the front solo of a game. So, I mean, with him winning his fourth championship this year, the season that he had, the finals that he had, you know, Western Conference Finals MVP, you know, all of that, like, why would you not put Steph Curry on the cover? Because he's never been on a cover solo. It makes the most sense. Now, the kicker here is, like you said, a lot of these decisions are made far in advance. So I'm sure that maybe even during NBA 2K21's or like at the beginning of NBA 2K22 cycle, they reached out to Devin Booker and his representatives, and they worked out that deal. So that's probably the case here. But Steph Curry would be a logical choice, obviously, for the 2K23 cover athlete. Another one would be Jokic, right? Jokic has won now 2 MVPs, and sure, they're not making it deep in the playoffs, but he is a face of the league. And, you know, you look no further than him winning 2 back-to-back you know, MVPs. So he would be another choice. And he actually has never been on the cover for NBA 2K. And he's a more logical choice than Devin Booker. So I see why there was a lot of people, you know, saying like, well, just Booker really deserved to be the cover athlete. Another thing that people are bringing up, and I know that you had brought it up too, kind of a missed opportunity, NBA 2K23, you know, number 23, Michael Jordan. You know, why not capitalize that and make Michael Jordan the actual cover athlete for the game, for the regular version, not like a Legends edition, but like the regular version. So there's a lot of different things that they could have done that probably would have been received a little bit better or a lot better than putting Devin Booker on the cover. But, it does come down to the gameplay, the modes, how the servers work, all of that stuff. That's the most important. But cover athlete-wise, I feel like they might have been able to do a little bit better.
No, that's absolutely fair. As far as Booker goes as well, if they sign that deal around about mid-season or whatnot, the Suns were on top of the league. So that's probably why they signed him. They thought, the Suns, this is going to be the Suns' year. That they came up short in the finals last year, but they're coming back with a vengeance this year. Of course, they didn't come the postseason, but during the regular season, they were on top for a lot of the year. Didn't they finish with the best record in the league last season?
I believe they did, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you sign that deal in January, February, even March or April, then you're going to say, this is the top team in the league. It looks like they're going to make another run at the title. Seems like a pretty good choice. Then he didn't have a great playoff performance, and of course they were out early, so it didn't it didn't look very good. But he is still a prominent name, so it won't hurt them at all. As for MJ being on the cover, I would love to see it. And yes, it would be great if he is just the standard edition cover to capitalize on that 2K23. But here's the thing, if you put him on the Legend Edition cover, then you sell the Legend Edition, which is more expensive. So that's what they're going to do there.
All right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I still think that they didn't do really enough for the 75th anniversary. I think you would agree.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that on the past podcast. Maybe they'll do a little bit more content related to that and related to the history of the game in NBA 2K23. Who knows? But who would you have liked to see on the cover for the regular edition of NBA 2K?
I mean, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't really have a preference, I suppose. I don't really put that much stock in the cover player. I think Steph Curry, as you say, is that default choice, certainly in hindsight, when you see what they want to do and win the fourth title. But apart from that, I honestly don't really have a preference. How about you?
Actually, I think Steph Curry should have been. I mean, Kyrie Irving got his own cover on 2K18. Hell, Anthony Davis has had his own cover on 2K20. Greek Freak got his on 2K19. Paul George got his on 2K17. Durant got his on 2K15, etc. I think Steph Curry is long overdue to have his own cover, and I think this would have been a great opportunity. It might have been a little bit too late. They probably didn't think the Warriors were going to win the championship because they certainly weren't favored in the finals or even to make it that far, to be honest. So yeah, I would have liked to see Steph Curry. I think it was just a little bit too late in the cycle, even if they wanted to do that. So that's the way I look at it.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at NBA-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. And since we brought up NBA 2K22 as well, this is something we were talking about before we started recording, and you brought up that it might be a good idea to kind of recap it, because we are reaching the end of its support. There's just a new season that's tipped off in my career and my team. That's what the most recent patch was about. No patch notes, by the way, just announcing that it was updating the game for Season 8. There is a Season 9 in August, which is going to take us through the previous season and into the release of NBA 2K23. But yeah, kind of maybe not a post-mortem of NBA 2K22, but certainly reflections on what that's been like. And yeah, it's you've played a lot more than I have. But yeah, let's talk about 2K22 and how that panned out.
So I think it's going to work a little different for both of us. Both of us bought the PC version and the console version. Mm-hmm. However, I played a lot more of both than you did. So I think we're going to come away with, at the end of this, it's going to be, I got my money's worth and you didn't. So I kind of already see where that's heading. So for the PC version, I looked at it, and some of this I played offline, so it doesn't reflect the actual hours, but it shows that I have about 110 hours in for gameplay on 2K22 PC. My brother and I are 11 games right now into a co-op My League with Legends. So with, our regular Legend seasons, etc., versus the regular teams. And then we're another 10 games in on another My League using, like we talked about on the past podcast, just like a fun cartoon season, like cartoon players, etc. And then we're another 8 or 9 games in on a season with all three of us, me and my two brothers, co-op. So we've definitely put in a lot of hours recently on NBA 2K22 PC. It's only strong for us gameplay wise in that co-op atmosphere, really, with a ton of slider tweaks. And if we're just trying to have like loose fun and not be super competitive. So that's that for the PC version. I've also recently gotten into a little bit of modding on it, trying to make some faces for fun. That was partially motivated by JMO, who made all of those great cartoon player mods, Mario, Luigi, etc. So I started getting back into that, trying to sharpen my skills in Blender and in Photoshop, etc. So that's been kind of fun as well. So that's another way I've been spending time on the PC version of the game. On the console version, so on my Xbox Series X, my brother and I finished 98 games. So we did an 82-game season, and then we won all 16 games in the playoffs. So we have over, 100 hours into the console version of it. And, I made some videos for my YouTube channel showing highlights of that season, and with slider tweaks and in that co-op atmosphere, just kind of like on the PC version, the game was pretty fun overall. So over 100 hours in on the PC version, over 100 hours in on the Xbox Series X, and I beat probably half of the domination challenges on my team in the Xbox Series X version. So I got my money's worth. If you're talking about getting over 200 hours between both, probably around 250 total hours between both the PC version and the console version. That's me getting my money's worth. We had a lot of fun with the way that we were playing. So now, how about you?
I mean, there's no doubt that you got your money's worth and got a lot more out of 2K22 than I did on either platform. Actually, I got it 3 times. I got PS4, PS5, and PC. So I really went out with collecting it this year. Look, as you know, I'm a collector and a content creator, obviously, and if nothing else, I want to be able to check things out for other gamers, and when I'm posting news, it helps to be able to fire up the game to be able to go in and check these things out. So it was worth it for that, if nothing else. From my personal enjoyment, I mean, I guess I didn't get my money's worth from any of the versions of the game, and didn't really get the enjoyment that I was hoping for. But I'm not too upset about that, probably because I've had so much fun with 2K14, right? So I haven't really had... It's not like I haven't had anything to play on the virtual hardwood for the past 12 months or so. So I'm not too upset, if you will. I mean, I budget for those games every year. I'm a collector, I'm a content creator in the basketball gaming community. That's an investment that I'm going to make every year. Sometimes it pays off better than others. But no, I haven't got that enjoyment or that value for money, really. Haven't really spent that much time with them, haven't felt compelled to. Part of it is really enjoying that 2K14 my career, of course, but even so, when I've tried to go back to 2K22, just not really felt it. I was playing a little bit recently just to get some screenshots for a news post, and you know what, I had some fun moments, but at the same time I thought, I don't really feel compelled to play a full game of this. So that's pretty much how I feel at 2K22. You know, I really wanted to dive into making content for that this year and trying some slider tweaks and maybe some tutorials or other kinds of resources, gameplay-based resources and whatnot. And even do a written review, which I haven't done for years, and it didn't end up doing. And then I was, for months, just thinking, oh, well, I'll do a final word review. Kind of, this is the game in its final form. This is my final thoughts on it. But I've spoken about it so much on the podcast, I didn't get around to doing that. I will try and do that with 2K23 and really dive into that again and hopefully enjoy it a lot more. Hopefully I will be able to get my money's worth and more enjoyment out of that. And maybe that will encourage me to put 2K14 aside at long last. We will see. But yeah, 2K22, I just didn't feel it on the sticks. You know, there's a lot in the modes that I liked in theory, but you know, I'm very big on the gameplay and modes have to matter, but certainly gameplay is paramount. And maybe I should have tried some of your slider tweaks and see if I liked that a bit better. But yeah, I just couldn't get into 2K22 this year.
I should have sent those over. I completely forgot, so I'm sorry about that. I could still send them over if you want to give them a try, because we're still a few months out from NBA 2K23 being released. I think with NBA 2K22, and I think you would agree, it's not a memorable game. Like, we're not going to look back on NBA 2K22 and say, well, this stood out. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that really stands out about it that you would say is special or unique or incredibly fun or anything like that. It's just like kind of a continuation, right? That's how it feels. It's like a continuation from 2K20 and 2K21 with nothing that you're like, wow, about. There's nothing that's going to make Andrew, other than, writing an article or something like that. There's nothing going to make Andrew, when 2K23 is released, put 2K22 on and try to have a full game, right? So that's the thing. Like, when you look at games in the past that had special stuff, like NBA Live 06, you love NBA Live 06. It had, freestyle superstars, which really stood out. It's something to, that's fun that you can go back and revisit. It's incredibly, you look forward to getting on the sticks because of that special feel, etc. NBA Live 2004, the freestyle control and being able to, and you jump exactly, and you jump onto that game and you're like, all right, this really stood out for this game. This was memorable. This is, something where I can get on the sticks and still enjoy this, etc. There's nothing like that with NBA 2K22. So I actually read an article on this. I can't remember who wrote it, and they said that it's really hard to get excited about getting on the sticks on this game because of the company's direction, kind of how they've gone with their online seed, how toxic it is, the server issues, the gambling mechanics, all of that stuff. And then also not feeling like a roster update. They did do new implementations like the dunk meter, etc., but it not having anything that really wows you, right? So, like, I completely agree with that article. I'll have to find that, but I think you would agree that that's what it is. It's like NBA 2K22 was just another release with nothing really special with it.
Another year, another game, right?
That's how it felt, right? Exactly. And you never want that to happen, right? You never want to pick up a game and be like, because here's the truth. When NBA 2K23 is released, I will probably not go back to NBA 2K22 on console, on my Xbox Series X. I might never go back and play another game of it. That's the truth. The only reason why I would even entertain playing the PC version again is because of the great mods. So just to look at them and maybe continue a season with my brothers using those mods, etc. But chances are I may never play the Series X 2K22 version again.
Well, the games these days are being made to be far more disposable than they used to be. I mean, as you said, you go back to Live 06, you've still got your Dynasty mode, and you've got the novelty of Freestyle Superstars, which was only implemented in that way in that game, that you can turn it off for players if you wish. 07 was similar, but did make a few changes to the controls for Freestyle Superstars. Live 2000, you've got that first franchise mode in the series. 2004, you brought in the new 10-man freestyle. You've got the second iteration of freestyle control for the right stick controls for dribbling and whatnot. And you've got a few other additions there, including the first revamp into Dynasty mode, 2K11, Jordan Challenge, etc. Even with 2K14 PS4, which I've been playing a lot, being able to go back and play that offline version of my career has been so special. And going through multiple seasons and seeing my career stats add up and having the story told to me through gameplay. Obviously, there were the cutscenes as well in that mode for the first time. But also, once you get past that, just having the story of role-playing an NBA career, you've still got that. You've still got that offline experience. 2K21, 2K22, like other recent games, once the servers go offline, you lose a lot of content. And a lot of the freshness that makes those games stand out from their predecessor is the live service content, which you can't enjoy. You can't go back and enjoy that content years later, like we can with 2K14, My Career, or the Jordan Challenge, or NBA's Greatest, or a franchise or season mode in older games. So that is definitely a big part of the identity. The only thing that it has is that live service content and the roster updates. I say the only thing. Those are big things at the time, but they don't make the games timeless. So
right,
yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah,
gameplay,
yeah.
fun gameplay, wow gameplay, special aspects to gameplay.
Exactly.
Overall, good feeling gameplay is what people return to a game for, right? And offline modes that accommodate them when the servers go down. So, like, that is what's missing with games like 2K20, 2K22, and 2K21. There isn't that wow factor in the gameplay. There isn't this crazy looking forward to getting on the sticks, or this crazy looking forward to revisit it with a friend, all of that stuff. It just felt like another game, right? And I think what was cool about what EA Sports was doing actually with NBA Live is, we talked about it on a previous show. They made a huge fumble with NBA Live 14, right? But when they moved on to NBA Live 15, they made a ton of changes and they added different aspects to the gameplay, and they made that game worth revisiting. You notice I revisited that recently, right? NBA Live 15. I think it has a lot of gameplay issues. There's movement issues, like momentum issues with the movement. The dribbling isn't tight. The post game is robotic, all of that stuff. But there's still such a big difference from NBA Live 15, from NBA Live 14, that I look forward to revisiting that game, getting on the sticks with people, and having a good time. And then, with NBA Live 18, they went in a different direction, and it's very unique in comparison to NBA Live 16. So I can go from like NBA Live 15 and Live 16 to NBA Live 18 and get kind of a fresh experience, right? And it's almost fun at times to just revisit those games and connect with people and play them like I did with Sticky Fingers, etc. So I don't get that feeling with NBA 2K20, 2K21, and 2K22. Like, I don't have this urge to go back and revisit them and connect with people on them.
It's a game that's meant to be disposed. Again, I say disposable games. It's a game that you're meant to move on from when the new one comes out. And I mean, obviously that needs to happen because they're selling a game every year. We need to have reason to move on, and we certainly look to do so with the new season, new rookies, the latest transactions, improvements to the gameplay and modes, etc. But when it's made to be disposed like that, there's nothing really special about it at the same time. It's just, this is this year's iteration of 2K. You get what you get. There's no competition. There's that staleness. There's that fatigue, as I said, which is definitely a factor. And it's funny because playing 2K14, there are a lot of issues in 2K14 that are still in 2K22. And they annoy me more in 2K22 because I think that should have been fixed by now. In 2K14, I can kind of forgive them because also there's so much about 2K14 that feels better on the sticks. So that helps, obviously. And being so engaged in my career that I'm in. But the legacy issues that have been there since 2K14 that are still in 2K22, I feel more forgiving to them. And maybe that's unfair, but the fact is, when you still see them in 2K22, you can't help but think this should have been fixed. Whereas 2K14, well, that's an old game. I can forgive that.
Well, I want to say this. I think that's a really good way of putting it. That the newest 2Ks, the last few years, I'd say probably since 2K18 at least, are made for disposal.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think that what the goal is to have almost all of the gamer base, all of the 2K gamer base, ready to move on and not look back. Like, that's the way the games are made. And I mean, I understand the marketing aspect of it. I understand the business aspect of it, and it works for them, right? We've already seen it. They get over 10 million gamers every year downloading these games. But I think that creativity has been lost in all this, and the wow factor and the special aspect has been lost they're not trying to do the next big thing and the next big creative thing. They're just kind of, implementing these small little changes, etc., and then moving on. And I think that that's hurting the feel of these games. And I think that gameplay isn't as fun as it used to be on these games.
And it's funny because the more dull a game is, the less likely you are to look forward to the next game or even get it. Because obviously, while 2K still sells 10 million copies every year, thereabouts, they're always getting new customers and new people buying the game, and people who say they're not going to buy it but then end up doing so at the same time. But there are a lot of people who have boycotted the game or do boycott certain years, or they certain skip a few years because they were so unimpressed by the predecessor. So that does happen. And it's also gotten to the point where maybe you and I feel a bit cynical at times certainly about developer blogs. We've talked about that before, how we've identified outright lies. That retroactively we've seen that they're lies when we compare last year's blog to this year's blog and see that they've talked about this feature last year and they heralded it as an intentional improvement, a great improvement, and then next year admitted, oh, that was just a band-aid fix for a problem that we couldn't resolve by the time the game had to go gold. So it's hard to trust those blogs. It seems like you're waiting to see which kind of how are they going to screw up the gameplay this year? Like what's going to be that one mechanic that we don't like this year? Like, okay, shot aiming in 2K21, we didn't like that, but that goes away. Great, but now we've got an alley-oop meter. Why do we have that? Why is this one change being made that we need to have something new in the gameplay, but it's a bad idea?
I think the developer blogs' goals, and this is just from reading them over the last few years, is to put down the past game.
Yep.
As passively as possible, right?
Yep.
So just trying to, word it a certain way where it sounds passive, but it's like saying, but basically putting it down. And then also say that they've made improvements in areas where they already said in the past that they made improvements, but they didn't. Right. So or it's still a problem in the game, but they lied on a prior blog and said that it was fixed, but it wasn't. So those are the two aspects that I expect now when I read the developer blogs. Again, it's marketing, it's business, but it doesn't make it right.
No, absolutely not. But with that in mind, as we reflect on 2K22, if you had to... I don't like numerical scores, to be honest, because they feel kind of arbitrary at times, but at the same time they do sum things up in a neat little package, to quote Homer Simpson. If you had to give 2K22 on both platforms, both the current gen and next gen version of the game, if you had to give it a score out of 10, what do you think you'd give it? What do you think we'd give each version?
Wow. So there's going to be two parts to this answer. I would say if you went with vanilla gameplay, which is basically no slider tweaks, and it's, because you can't make slider tweaks in my team, right? And there's people that are going online, etc. There's no way to make slider tweaks and everything. I might score it on PC. I'd give it a 3 or a 4 with slider tweaks. Man, the way I like to play it, like co-op and whatnot, and play it offline with my brothers and everything, I'd give it maybe a 6.5, at the highest a 7, but maybe a 6.5. On Xbox Series X, by default, the game does feel a little bit better, especially if you're using the current teams. But it's hard for me to give it a high score because of the copy and paste spreadsheet stuff and BS stuff that they pull with all the classic teams, all-time teams, and how poorly those teams feel, and then and whatnot, and how poorly they feel in my team often as well as a result, because they're the same ratings and copy paste stuff. I would say without slider tweaks on the Xbox Series X version, maybe I would give it a 5, and that's generous considering what they pull with the other aspects of the game, the gambling mechanics, and then this copy, spreadsheet copy and paste with the rosters, etc. I'd say with slider tweaks, the way that my brother and I were playing, the Legends season, all of that stuff, I might give it about a 7. But that's obviously not factoring in modes that we don't play and what other gamers have to deal with, like all the My Team challenges, and then the park gameplay and the builds and all of that stuff, which I don't get into. So that's kind of my roundabout way of answering it. I can't give this like a straight score. What about you?
Well, that's the thing about scores, right? They do feel kind of arbitrary after a while. It's more about the details, the impressions that you give in a review. So, no, but I do think that those scores are kind of what line up with what I'd give them as well. I went back to see what I gave them when I created a couple of topics in the NBA 2K20 section of the NLSC forum. And yeah, 5 was what I arrived at both, because I think at the end of the day, both versions of 2K22 are too well-made overall, too deep, still too consistent to give them like a 1 or a 2 or anything really much lower than a 4 at the very worst, because there's too much competence still in the product. Like, you and I, we've played some truly terrible basketball games, right? We've played Kid Sports Basketball, we've played Incredi Basketball, or did we play Incredi Basketball? I think we played International Basketball 2009. Basically the same game, same engine. So we've played some pretty awful games, had some fun laughing at them. Live 07 for Xbox 360, obviously. So when that's your barometer, 2K22, for me, can't be like a 1 or a 2. As much as it might feel satisfying to say at times when I was so frustrated with those games that, oh, this is just a 2, this is a 1. But no, I can't really go higher than 5 because of my lack of enjoyment, but I can't go lower than that because I think there's too much competence in both products to really go much lower than 5.
Right. There's two big problems that I have with NBA 2K22. One, the game plays incredibly, and we talked about this so many times before. This game plays pretty poorly out of the box, right? Without you tweaking sliders or fixing the all-time teams, classic teams, etc. I think it just plays poorly overall. There's way too many gameplay issues. So that's a huge red flag, because I think that a large portion in the majority of the gamer base doesn't do slider tweaks. I think they choose their difficulty level and just try to go into a game, or they'll go into a My NBA, or they'll go into a My League if they're on PC, etc. So there's that. And then there's always the elephant in the room, right? The gambling mechanics and honestly, the preying on minors. And some of the 2K influencers, and we've talked about this before, some of the 2K influencers do that too. They boast, I'm betting $500 on this My Team game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm betting $1,000 on this My Team game. And I don't know if 2K is asking them to do this, or if it's the influencer that's just doing it and 2K doesn't stop them from doing it, etc. But these people are actively working for 2K. Their faces are in the game. 2K promotes them and everything. And they're being like, I'm betting $1,000 on this My Team game. Who's going to challenge me, right? Like stuff like that. Or watch this video where I spend $2,000 on packs. Like, that's a huge red flag. And so with 2K pulling that stuff, and their influencers pulling that stuff, and the gambling mechanics that are in the game, it makes me want to give them a 1, right?
Exactly.
Like, it makes me want to give their game. Like, it makes me want to write a long article about that, and about how the game feels often by default, and then give them like a lower than a 3 as a score. So those are the two big things for me that really bother me with what 2K is doing.
And My Career and My Team are riddled with those mechanics. Obviously, those are their big moneymakers, especially My Team. And like I said, going back to the whole disposable games aspect, all of that work you put in, either grinding or indeed the money you spend, in a year's time, that's pretty much useless because none of that transfers over. Yes, you can go back and play that until the servers get shut down after 27 months, but you still lose that content at the end of the day. You can't go back and enjoy that content. It is meant to be disposable. So I'm just so sick of the grind. I can't, especially after having such a fun journey in 2K14. That I can't do that grind again. I've done it so many times in more recent My Careers, in more recent NBA 2K releases, and I'm just fed up with it. I had to go at My Team. I like what they do with the season content. I think there's value in that. Of course, it's also meant to make you want to spend on the latest packs because the top cards from Season 1 are pretty much obsolete by Season 3 or 4, if that. So that's the way it goes with live service content. Again, disposable. It's not built to last. The gameplay didn't grab me, and that's a bad combination. On top of that lack of goodwill, of feeling that those issues haven't been addressed, then of course you throw in the recurrent revenue mechanics, the microtransactions and whatnot. You just don't feel good about the brand.
Right. At times when I've seen that tweet where it's like, watch my video where I open packs for $2,000 worth of packs on My Team, whether it was a he or a she that posted it, whoever the influencer was, I've wanted to maybe respond and be like, he or she is a 10, but they encourage gambling for minors.
Yeah.
Like they encourage minors to gamble, just to call them out on it. So I can use that TikTok trend too and use it the right way, because that is an absolute negative. And it's ridiculous. And it makes me kind of queasy that, and I think it does for you too, that 2K allows this. Like, there's one influencer who they put in the game many years now, his face is in the game, etc., who constantly talks about his gambling and has videos like that, watch me open for this amount of money, and all of this stuff, and challenges people to play him on my team for like $500, etc. I don't know how he feels good about that, but regardless if he feels good about it or not, how does 2K not reach out to him and be like, hey, you can't represent us this way?
Yeah, if they're still doing business with influencers like that, they are passively encouraging it, 100%. So that really does disgust me as well. And yeah, swipe left on microtransactions. Well, absolutely. With all that being said, there's always an element of anticipation every year with the new game coming out. I'm always hopeful that they have gone in the right direction, that some of those mechanics from the last game that I didn't like have been taken out because there has been that negative feedback from the community. Unfortunately, you also have the community pushing, elements of the community, I should say, pockets of the community, pushing back and saying, get good, right? You know, my favorite saying, get good. And justifying mechanics that it's not that you can't master them, it's that they're not a good idea or they're not well implemented, even if they're maybe a good idea but they're poorly executed. That's what people are calling out, that this hasn't actually improved the gameplay. This hasn't implemented a skill gap. This hasn't made it more fun on the sticks. It's not that we can't master it, it's that we shouldn't. And I've said that before, that it doesn't come down to an inability, it's necessity, and often it's unnecessary.
They've never been further from a true skill gap than they are right now.
Yep. Too many boosts.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how far away they are from actual skill gap. I know I've said it before. Players who don't even understand the game at all, they could understand the game far less than you. And they could have pumped money into the game and got all these artificial boosts, could blow you out and score 80 points on you by, BSing the game and just playing like crap, but they have the boosts that allow them to do what they're doing. So I see all the videos. I've talked to you about it before. I've seen all the videos of, people's box scores and then the gameplay that, produced that box score and everything. And the gameplay always looks absolutely stupid and ridiculous. It's always the same side to side dribbling, the same behind the back sliding dribbling. It's always like these ridiculous over dribbling and then a step back and then a green from like 35 feet. It's players. The defense is so poor in that game and the sliding is so bad. Players like force action, like they'll do like a bunch of over dribbling and then they'll have a wide open lane to the hoop. I showed you a highlight of this. And instead of taking that lane to go to the hoop and get the free layup, they pull it back and just over dribble some more and then they step back from 35 feet and hit a three. That's not basketball. That's ridiculous.
And elements like the dunk meter and the alley-oop meter, I've said it before, but they're basically glorified QuickTime events. That's not really skillful.
No, 100%. I think the dunk meter and the contact dunk meter and the alley-oop meter never should have been implemented, and I think overall they were implemented poorly. I also think it's ridiculous that the game didn't get released with an option to have that meter turned off. So it's this big meter that the only way you can turn it off is by turning off all gameplay indicators. That's the only way you can make it so you can't see it. So that's what my brother and I had to do in my NBA. I think the mechanic is faulty. I don't think it works right, and I don't think it has any business being in a basketball game. And that's my opinion.
I agree, and it's one of those things that I hope they amend in 2K23. I hope the feedback from the community has steered them in the right direction with that. I haven't seen Beluba asking about it, which is kind of a concern. He did ask about shot aiming, and that did have a good impact. As much as people said, the less skilled players whined and they took it out. No, people who recognized the problem with that mechanic as it was implemented voiced their objections to it. 2K listened to it. If 90% of the community, the user base, doesn't like a mechanic, that probably suggests that there's a problem with the mechanic. If not the concept, not the underlying concept, then certainly the execution. And shot aiming is one of those things, it's kind of Beluba's baby, that he's kind of tried to bring back a few times, and it's never really worked out too well. 2K17 is the best it's been.
It's the best. Yeah, I was about to say, NBA 2K17 shot aiming actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And it actually works, and it's functional, and it's not all over the place. So no, I agree. I was about to say that 2K17 shot aiming is the best that they've ever had.
So I mean, it is possible, and that's the closest it can be to that. So I think if an idea keeps flopping like that, you just have to leave it aside. There's a reason that Live left Freestyle Superstars behind. It was okay for the time, but there are better ways of having player differentiation and signature moves in a game. So that was that intermediate step from having none of that to having proper signatures, although 2K has done that much better than Live has, admittedly. Again, with all that being said, 2K23 preview season right around the corner. I do hope we get some exciting news. I hope that it's not just a slow trickle, although that's probably foolish to hope that because of the way it is, and with no competition, there's no back and forth and exciting stuff every single day as there used to be during the previous seasons of the heyday of both 2K and NBA Live competing with one another. But I'm still hoping for good news. I'm very willing, as much as I'm enjoying 2K14, as I've said so many times, I am willing to play 2K23. I hope that I am enthralled by it. I don't mind putting 2K14 on the shelf, coming back to that career after spending some time with 2K23, if indeed I'm enjoying it. And I do have an article coming out that's talking about how 2K23 could win me over. Obviously, doesn't need to win me over. It's going to do well. It's going to do gangbusters anyway. But as far as what I want to see, that's what I'm talking about in that article. I think it can, but it does come down to making those gameplay improvements. Modes, pretty much, especially with my NBA being like it is, as deep as that franchise experience is in NBA 2K. I'm not so worried about that. I'll find something to play. I'll dabble with my team. I'll dabble with my career, possibly. My NBA is there. But if gameplay enthralls me, if gameplay hooks me in 2K23, I can definitely do that. And I want to give it a chance, especially after 2K22. I want 2K23 to impress me, to really be fun, and I'd love to get hooked on it. But we'll see.
I think that's what people need to understand. As frustrated as we are with the series, as frustrated as we have been with the last few releases that they've come out with, as much as we're frustrated with all the gambling mechanics and all of the the way the game feels by default and everything, we want a great basketball game, right?
Absolutely.
So if NBA 2K, it's the reason why we go back and play NBA 2K12, NBA 2K13, same company, great games, right? NBA 2K14, you're deep into my career because you're enjoying the gameplay. It's fun. You're guilt-free, right? When you're playing it, you don't feel queasy when you're playing the game because of the company's direction at the time when they made that game and how fun it is. So we want 2K to be great. We want their games to be great. We never go into a release hoping it sucks. And I don't think any game, the majority of gamers who are frustrated with 2K, they are also not hoping on the next game to suck. Because if the game's really fun and it's fair to them, what are they going to do? They're going to play it. They're going to get their friends on it. Their friends are going to play it, etc. And they'll go back and play it years later because it will be a memorable and fun title. So that's the thing that I want people to understand. It's not hating, quote unquote hating, and it's not bashing all of that stuff or mindlessly bashing. We have issues with 2K and the way they've been carrying themselves and what they've, the gambling mechanics and the gameplay not wowing us and not being super fun on the sticks over the last few years. But we want great basketball games, so we really hope that the next one is great.
No doubt. I think everyone's in that same boat. People who have their criticisms of the game, as we do. Only the haters are looking to hope that the game is terrible to bash it. And there's probably more shills and fanboys than there are haters, but they certainly both exist at both ends of the spectrum there. But everyone else in between just wants a great game, just wants great basketball on the sticks, and hopefully we do get that for 2K23. We are waiting for the previous season to officially tip off with presumably Devin Booker as the cover, leaked again by Shams, but as the details come through, we will be sharing those on the site and in the forum, and of course talking about it here on the podcast. Fortunately, we do have other stuff to play if we don't feel the latest game. I've been playing 2K14. Obviously, I have actually started my story thread. At long last, been ages since I've done one of those, but it's in the stories section of our forum. Please check that out. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at NLSC for further updates. And of course, you've got your 2K19 My League with the 95 season with Stildo. And we've got the road trip in On Fire Edition, which has been a blast recently.
I'm surprised it took you so long to start that 2K14 My Career thread because you love those story threads. I see you in there often, etc. And you waited till season 4. until you started that thread. So that was a little bit surprising because I know that this has been one of your most enjoyable gaming exploits that you've had maybe in your life. Reaching, getting this far in my career, and the Terry Hansen bit and the player movement, and making the Hall of Fame and all of that stuff. Like, I'm surprised you didn't start that thread earlier.
Well, you saw how much effort I've put into it already, having to do the catch-up. It's been a case of I wanted to start it, but knowing the effort it takes, kind of putting it on the back burner, and then just playing so much of the game, just enjoying the game, that suddenly I'm 4 seasons in and I haven't done a thread on it yet. Of course, the articles for Monday Tip-Off and Way Back Wednesday talking about seasons 1, 2, and 3 so far. You can go back and check those out as well. Links in the story thread at the top. But yeah, a year 4, I had to do a big catch up to let people know and do recap some of the big player movement and whatnot, so people aren't wondering why Kobe and LeBron are playing together in LA, things like that. But that was a lot of fun to do. Doing a little bit of creative writing in that thread as well, the fake articles and whatnot, as a lot of us do in those story threads. So please check that out. Check out all of those story threads. There's a few people that are very active, still in that section, still passionate about it, and some really good stories going on. So definitely check that out. But again, Road Trip, we've got you put together the video of our Mini-Men Challenge, which is the Pistons Gold Challenge in Road Trip. What a fun game that was, and what an interesting challenge when you make mini plays and change up the physics of the game like that.
So I reached out to Andrew randomly, and I was like, hey, you're free to play a few games of Road Trip. And have we ever connected on Road Trip and on NBA Jam on Fire Edition? Have we ever connected on that and had a bad time?
I don't think so. Well, the Clippers challenge. The Clippers challenge was tough. That was also frustrating.
Yeah, but it wasn't a bad. It was a little frustrating, but it wasn't a bad time. Like, it's still fun.
Too, yeah.
Also,
yeah.
That was when we first started playing together. So I mean, we connect on that game and we usually have a blast. So I was like, I had some free time. You had some free time, so we connected. And the first game we played was almost my favorite, actually, out of the 4 that we played that night, because I was like, Andrew, use Ben Gordon. Andrew loves Ben Gordon. Let's be honest. We brought him up on the last podcast about his Bulls days. Ben Gordon is on the Pistons in NBA Jam on Fire Edition. I used the Detroit Pistons mascot in that game, and Andrew was able to go off with Ben Gordon, and I think you may have hit like 10 to 12 threes or something like that in that game. And it was just cool to see you use one of your favorite players and go off. And it's always more special when you're using a player you loved.
Ben Gordon was my first favorite active player after MJ. Spent a few years in the wilderness there with the Bulls, being in the basement, the NBA basement, and just struggling to get back to relevance and being enjoyable to watch and to follow and to play with in video games as well, for that matter. So when Ben Gordon came along and he emerged and was 6th Man of the Year, should have been Rookie of the Year as well, quite frankly. I think if you're 6th Man of the Year, you also get Rookie of the Year. I think he was robbed. They just wanted to give it to 2 players, but he should have been both. Darrell Armstrong got Most Improved and 6th Man of the Year in 99. So I'm just saying, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. But Ben Gordon was really fun to follow as that first player. And of course, when I got into the NBA, and really got into basketball in the NBA, Michael Jordan was well established as a star. So I didn't see the rise. I mean, you and I were born, as he was coming into the league. So you were following his career earlier than I was. But even so, he was still established, I guess, by the time we really had that awareness of basketball and really kind of being in the thick of our passion of basketball fandom. But Ben Gordon was that player that came into the league. The Bulls drafted him with the 3rd pick, funnily enough, and I was able to enjoy that rise and feel a disappointment, obviously, when he signed with the Pistons. So it was fun to play with him again. I will say, though, that while it was fun to shoot, while it was fun to play offense with him, playing defense, because usually I'm all about hanging back and getting those blocks with someone like a Sean Kemp or a Kevin Garnett. Trying to do that with Ben Gordon, that was tough. So defensively, it wasn't the ideal for me, but offensively, putting up those threes and watching them drop, that was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then we scratched that itch of being able to be dominant on defense in the next 2 games that we played, where we used Peyton and Kemp. So you were Kemp and I was Peyton, and then we also used Julius Erving and Daryl Dawkins, where you were able to use Daryl Dawkins. And man, Daryl Dawkins is fun in that game.
He is, yeah.
He has such a variety of dunks, and he stops everything at the rim, and he's fast, etc. So we won all of those games. Actually, we played 4. We won all of them. It was a mix between bronze, silver, and gold challenges. I posted that video to the NLSC YouTube of the Mini-Men Challenge. And that was a gold challenge against the Pistons. And the players are just so small. It is ridiculous. And the gameplay mechanics change up as a result. And I had never played that challenge before. You had. And it's an incredible, and it's really hard. Like it's definitely difficult. It's a big challenge, and we beat it on the first try. And I thought that was really cool. I think both of us are very confident on that game as a team.
Yes.
I think we're very good together. I think that we both really understand the mechanics of the game well, and we really play off of each other really well on offense and defense. And I think that probably contributed to us beating that on the first try. But I was pretty proud of that, so I had to post that video. And in that game, we were against Dennis Rodman and Isaiah Thomas, and we were using Kemp and Payton. And it worked out perfect, and I'm glad we won that game.
It's so difficult because you think that with mini-men, you can just shoot threes all day. But because they just leap up so quickly, and they just spring up immediately to compensate for their size, changes up the gameplay mechanics, as we said, it becomes incredibly difficult. And of course, it's a gold challenge, so the AI is being really tough and cheap. Let's be honest about that. So it is a very tough challenge. I don't think on PS3 or 360, on playing solo, I don't think I've beaten that challenge on the first try. So that was very special to be able to beat that. I think we do work fantastically well as a team. So that was really cool. It was close because we pulled ahead in the last minute, and then they had a couple of cheap moments, and I thought, oh no, don't let this slip away, because it looked like the CPU wanted to snatch that victory away from us, but we pulled it out. Funnily enough, we did have the first backboard shatter in a few sessions in that session we played. Not Kemp, not Daryl Dawkins, which would have been very appropriate, but Peyton. And it's always funny when it's the least likely person on the floor shatters the glass.
All right, I also think it's a little bit more special when it's shattered on an alley-oop.
Yes.
And you threw the alley-oop to me, and I broke the backboard with Peyton. It's always more special when it is Kemp that breaks the backboard, because, I mean, it's Kemp. He's one of the greatest dunkers in basketball history. But it's still cool whenever it happens, and I was happy that we were able to do that. I still think that a NLSC NBA Jam on Fire edition co-op tournament needs to happen, and maybe after the Lakers versus Celtics in the NBA Street Volume 2 tournament, maybe I'll get that together.
Yeah, it'd be great to revisit that, and now that more people are aware of the tournaments and enthusiastic about them, and seeing that we're running them, I think we will get enough people to do that co-op tournament. And like I said before, we could be the final bosses of that tournament if we want to do kind of a round robin kind of thing, or even a ladder, if you will. There's a lot of ways we can do that. It would be very fun to circle around back around to that game. But yeah, obviously a couple other games to cover first. Lakers versus Celtics, Street Volume 2, as you said, very popular as well. But no, that'll be a lot of fun if we can put that together. But yeah, we're making some good progress with Road Trip. Actually, we're over 50% done. The achievement popped up, so that's official now. We are more than halfway there. We're getting to the stage where a lot of the platinum challenges we're going to have to do for those divisions that we've finished, and then of course it culminates with the Beastie Boys in New York. So yeah, that's going to be really cool.
I'm excited to continue it, and I think that we'll feel a sense of accomplishment when we get to 100% and actually beat the entire mode and do all the achievements and unlock everything. So yeah, that's going to be exciting. And how cool is it that you live in Australia and I'm here, an hour outside of Boston, and we're able to play that entire mode together? It's really cool.
Exactly. And of course, now with the servers back on, we could do it the old-fashioned way. I'd actually be interested to see if that would work, me connecting on 360 to you on Xbox One. I mean, I wouldn't imagine it would work, but that'd be interesting to try, just to see. But the fact that co-op experience is back while the servers are back, and even if it's not, we can do it via the Xbox Companion app and Parsec is just brilliant. But yeah, we need to get you that roster update as well, even if it takes just signing up for a month of Xbox Live Gold just to jump into the online arena with that subscription and get the updates, because then we can get a few of the new rookies in the game and whatnot.
Right, I believe that would also get Jeremy Lin in the game,
It does, yes, yes.
which is what Q wanted to use in the NBA Jam on Fire Edition tournament that I did. But I didn't have the roster update, so he wasn't able to. But yeah, that is a good point. I do need to do that.
But we will continue to talk about what we're playing each and every week, and always fun to connect with you on Parsec, Derek. But we love interacting with our listeners, obviously, and you threw out a mailbag question this week. NBA 2K23 being right around the corner, the previous season, of course. You said, with NBA 2K23 right around the corner, who do you think should be the 5 highest rated players in the game? And we got some responses, so it's time to open up the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So first up, we have Betsmack, says Giannis, Jokic, Luka, KD, and Tatum. Interestingly, not Curry.
Yeah, I don't know how. I value his opinion. I'm glad that he answered the mailbag. I don't know how you don't include Curry, considering the season that he had and the way the season ended, etc. And that's what the ratings would be based on. In my opinion, Steph Curry would actually be at the top of the list. I'd probably make him the highest overall player in NBA 2K23. I don't think Tatum is there yet. I think he's too inconsistent as a player, and I don't think he's as an all-around player as a lot of many other players that are in the league. So I wouldn't have Tatum in my 5, but Steph Curry would be number 1. But like I said, I value his opinion.
I agree, 100%. I think at least 4 of those 5 are very good bets to be 4 of the 5 top-rated players in the game, and I would certainly agree that they should be. Tatum is the odd man out. Obviously, a fine player. People say that he was exposed in the finals. Look, some of the greatest players in NBA history, LeBron, Kobe, have had some kind of underwhelming finals. At least one underwhelming finals in their career. For a year there, Magic Johnson was called Tragic Johnson. Some of the best players in NBA history have had their struggles. I'm not saying Tatum is on their level or ever will be, but he has a great opportunity to bounce back from this. Celtics still turned around their season, making the finals the way they did. But, I don't think I'd put him in my top 5 just yet.
Right, and Tatum's only 24.
Yes.
I mean, he still has room to grow, not only as a player, but also, room to grow into his body, right? So, he hasn't even reached his prime yet overall. So it's very possible that Tatum could reach another level. We don't know. I mean, there's players that have peaked early on and then fizzled out and then vanished. Players like Tyreek Evans, who had that amazing.
I was going to say
right?
Tyreek Evans is the classic.
He's like the gold standard for that.
Yeah.
Where he had that great rookie year and then he never he never really got better from that point. Tatum can still get better. He can still get more consistent. He can still get better at finishing at the rim. He needs to stop complaining so much. Every single time he misses at the rim, even when nobody's touching him, he's complaining, etc. He just needs to play basketball. I think he needs to mature a bit in order to be, really one of the top, in order to be like a top 10 player in the league. He has some maturity he still needs to go through. But thank you for the response.
Next up, we have Knowledge Bone at the Harassment on Twitter. In no order, Jokic, Embiid, Curry, Giannis, and probably Bron. Wouldn't be too crazy to say maybe Luka instead. And I think that LeBron James probably is going to end up being one of the top-rated players by default. Obviously, he is still putting up numbers as an old man of 37, which makes me, an old man of 37, also feel very old to say. But I think, again, look, those are pretty good guesses. But I'd probably put Luka in there instead of LeBron James at this point. But Embiid is one that I could definitely include, and again Jokic. But yeah, Curry's definitely got to be in there, and Giannis is just incredible.
I mean, Jokic and Embiid make sense, right? Jokic, 2-time MVP. Embiid, the numbers that he's been putting up, even though they haven't been advancing in the playoffs, and just his dominance at times, the rating should favor him pretty damn well. So it makes sense to have both of those guys in there, and it's hard to argue against them.
And finally, we have Leo Valor in the forum, member of NLSC Thriller, of course. Shout out to you at Real Kiwi Mamba on Twitter. Luka, Jokic, Giannis, Curry, and he also says Tatum. Luka, Jokic, Giannis, and Curry are kind of those the big four, and then you kind of get to, does it be a KD or a Tatum or a LeBron James or Embiid? I think about 4 of those 5 are pretty solid. Difficult to argue, but then there's that 5th. Who do you put in that 5th spot? But I think all of these players are going to be among the top rated in the game. I would be very surprised if they're not.
Well, there's something that needs to be talked about. There's like Tatum, who makes it to the finals, right? Just because he makes it to the finals, is he a better basketball player, like ratings wise, than Kevin Durant? Like, is he better than Kevin Durant? Absolutely not. Okay. Like Jason Tatum is not as good of a basketball player right now as Kevin Durant. So that's something that the people at NBA 2K, and any company that makes sports games, basketball, video games, or whatever, they have to factor in, what's the most important here. So if you're going by who's the better basketball player and you're trying to accurately rate how they can perform and what they can do on the floor, who are you going to make better, Kevin Durant or Jason Tatum? Right. So that's why it's hard for me to even consider putting Jason Tatum in a top 5 overall scenario, because he is not a better basketball player than Kevin Durant. He can't do as much as Kevin Durant overall on the floor. He can't take over games like Kevin Durant really on a consistent basis, etc. So very hard for me to, even post-injury Kevin Durant, to have him in any list lower than Tatum.
I was looking at the MVP voting as well. I'm wondering if that's also a standard that one should look at for being the top rated players. And you look at the players on that list, and they're probably going to be there. The other thing with overall ratings, as always, is that it depends how it's calculated. Because back in the day, players like Steve Nash and Tony Parker that didn't necessarily have the leaping ratings, the jumping ratings, or some of the athletic ratings, or the defensive ratings to really boost that overall rating, They would always look very, very underrated. Whereas players like a Gerald Wallace or Josh Smith, because of their athleticism, rebounding numbers, and steals and blocks, their overalls always looked a little bit too inflated. So, I mean, we place too much emphasis on overall ratings in general, and always have. But to that point, you look at how they're calculated, and yeah, it's not the full story.
Right. I think somebody made a comment on my NBA 2K17 Ultimate Classic Teams roster where I had the 10-11 rows. I think it was like 90 overall. And I had some pushback on that. And I said, well, what you don't know is that Derrick Rose, with what makes up that 90 overall rating, he's playing like his real life self on the floor. If you want me to inflate that overall just because you like Derrick Rose and think that number should be higher, that means I'm going to have to make him all world defense. And he wasn't, right? Like, I would have to make Derrick Rose's defensive ratings a lot higher than they should be for that season. I'm not saying he was a bad defender, but he wasn't an all world defender.
No, it wasn't.
And in order for me to, right. So I would have had to inflate his rebound ratings. I would have had to inflate his defensive ratings just to give a more aesthetically pleasing overall rating when you view the roster. So he plays perfectly fine on the floor. I've used him and scored 50 points before. He's incredibly fast. His dribble package is great. All of that stuff. Like, he plays like Derrick Rose. But the overall rating being 90, could run people the wrong way, but they need to understand what goes into that 90.
Exactly. It's what I used to tell people when I was making the roster updates for NBA Live. They'd say, oh, such and such needs to be higher, he's underrated. And I'd say, okay, which individual ratings would you change? Because I'm not saying that I got it right every single time. And if a player's overall rating was wildly wrong, chances are that I had underrated or overrated them in certain areas. Absolutely. But if it was kind of in the ballpark, like if they're an 88 and they're saying, oh, it should be 89, 90, 91, something like that, a little bit higher, sometimes you can fudge a couple of ratings a little bit. There's enough there to fudge it without really changing the performance. But if not, you'd say, okay, what do I need to change? And quite often they couldn't point out anything that was completely wrong because the individual ratings were correct, but the overall was calculated in a way that wasn't ideal. I know 2K in the past, and possibly still, has a rating called intangibles, which you could use to boost the overall rating. And I don't think it really did much else because there was a separate class.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody knows exactly what intangibles does.
Yeah.
Because you could have somebody on 50 on intangibles and 99 on intangibles, and it feels like they play exactly the same on the floor, and you're putting up the same numbers. So It is a way where people can kind of fudge the overall ratings. And I'm not going to lie, I've done that a couple times before where it's like, all right, well, I'm going to make this guy 78 overall instead of 76 overall because he should have a higher overall, and I'm going to pump up his intangibles a little bit. I've done it before.
It's useful.
But I don't think
like
anybody. It's very useful, but only for the aesthetic portion.
Exactly. Yeah. So I suppose that if to that point, people do worry about the overalls looking wrong, and certainly it does look wrong if a player like a Steve Nash is rated too low compared to a point guard who was not in his league. But yeah, that intangibles rating is useful for that. But as you say, it's completely aesthetic when you look at the overall ratings, and it's what gets attention, right? It's why they do that in the previous season every year. But I stopped. I didn't even report on it last year. I didn't even post it on the site last year because it just doesn't interest me. I don't think it really interests people as much as it used to, especially when the concern is about gameplay and how the depth of the ratings and mode and legacy issues and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I might have retweeted some of them, the more prominent examples, but I used to report on that and post those bulletins of those overall rating reveals quite diligently. But last year, I thought that I don't think people really care as much, and they're so superficial that it's not something to worry about. But it's an interesting question at the same time because it does it also those go into the trade value for franchise modes as well, so they do have an impact on that. So and it does present players as who the game is promoting as the best in the league. So it matters in that respect. But it is again aesthetic and more of an image or even politics. The politics of the NBA. It's more about that than gameplay accuracy sometimes, because that's where the individual ratings and tendencies come in.
I think people find it far more interesting when a player complains about their rating.
Yes.
Like that's really when people get fired up and think it's incredibly fun, is when, maybe remember when Kobe Bryant was rated lower than a lot of players. I think it was in, NBA? Was it NBA 2K16?
Live 16 and 2K16 both had him fairly low compared to what he had.
Had him very, very low. And then, people were like, are you kidding me? That's the Bean, right? How did you rate him that low? Do you really think he's going to be that bad? And there were players that weren't superstars that were rated higher than him. And then people got a kick out of all the people that were, all the players that were, standing up for Kobe or complaining about 2K and live doing those ratings, etc.
I mean, the thing is, by the end of his career, he was kind of not playing his best because of all these injuries. So he was boosted in some of the ratings, in some of the roster updates, but not that much and not unrealistically. So it was, but it was funny. It's also funny when a rookie comes into the league, 30th pick of the draft and thinks they should be a 99 overall or a 95 overall. It's like, no, you shouldn't. Prove yourself first.
Or a role player who didn't perform that well that season gets a 72 or something like that, and then they respond to it. They're like, 72? That's what you guys are going to do to me? Looks like I got something to prove or something like that. And then, fans get a kick out of that.
I mean, they should count themselves lucky as well. I mean, back in the day, they'd probably rated 58, 60 overall, but now all the ratings are, very few players in the official rosters are rated lower than 70 or so, or high 60s at the very least. So back in the day, was it Joel Prisbilla was rated 35 overall in one of the games or something, or 36 overall. So that's insulting there. So
that's really insulting, right? He's a good shot blocker, actually.
But no, thank you for those responses. We do love to put those mailbag prompts out each and every week. And Derek, we love that our listeners respond so diligently and enthusiastically to them.
No, thank you for the responses. It'll be interesting to see what happens when NBA 2K23 comes out. Who they have as the top-rated players, who's underdone, who's overdone. And it's the first thing I'm going to dive into when I get into NBA 2K23, just like I do every year. I'm going to look at the classic teams. I'm going to look at the all-time teams. I'm going to see if they, continued with the copy and paste. And if they did, there's a chance that I'll probably call that out. So we'll see.
Having said that, that has brought us to the end of episode number 433 of the NLSC Podcast. We thank you for tuning in. The show comes out every week on the NLSC, of course, nb-live.com. You can also tune in on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, as well as our YouTube channel. Once again, we'd love to connect with you on social media. So, Derek, as always, I'll throw it over to you so you can tell everybody your socials.
Absolutely. You can reach me on Twitter at D4384 and at D43G. You can reach me on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, where I'm a team member over there, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. We are NLSC Basketball on Instagram. Our aforementioned YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.